I don't usually revisit my topics too soon after the release, but in this case I am going to revisit a topic that's very recent. That's the Fractal EMA robot. And I'm going to revisit it because I received a comment on YouTube that the strategy could be improved by using the RSI as the trend filter and taking the trades when the next candle closed past the fractal. If you haven't seen the earlier video, I'll leave a link to that because you should see it, and a lot of the work in today's video is going to be based on that, so you really will need that as a background. But briefly, in the earlier strategy, I would place a buy stop above a recent fractal. So for example, I would place a buy stop above this fractal, and I would place a sell stop below a recent fractal. So I'd place a sell stop there. And then based on the trend filter, which was 2 moving averages, I would take the trade for the buy or the sell when the price crossed those buy or sell stops. So in this case, I would have taken the sell here. With the revised strategy, I would be using the RSI as the trend filter, suggesting that I will buy if the RSI is above 50 and sell if it's below 50. But I would also wait until this candle closes and then take the trade for the short. Having broken this fractal here, I would take a short trade on the close of this candle, which is the first candle, to break that low. Now the reason I'm going to revisit this is not because I'm looking at an improvement to the strategy. I repeatedly say that this channel is not about trying to suggest or promote or even recommend any kind of strategy. This is all about the code. And I'm going to revisit this particular code simply because this change is a good example of how you can modify the code that I'm showing to create something different. So the two changes here are I'm going to be using the RSI instead of 2 moving averages for the trend filter, and I'm going to be taking trades on a candle closing past that specified limit. And I'm actually going to make 2 different expert advisors here. I'm going to make one as suggested using the RSI, and then I'm going to do the same thing for MACD, just so that you can see how to make those changes. But also for the MACD, I will be creating the MACD outside the framework, where for the RSI, I'm going to be updating the framework to include the RSI indicator. This does use the framework, and you should see the framework videos and the earlier video on the Fractal EMA to know what's going on here. So let's get into the code and start making the changes. Now I have the editor open showing the Fractal EMA. This is the expert advisor from the last video. I want to make a Fractal RSI, and the easiest way to begin that is to simply take a copy of this entire folder and then just rename everything. So I'll do that now and cut away and come back when I've finished making that copy. Now I've simply taken a copy of the Fractal EMA folder and copied that into this Fractal RSI folder, changed the file names, and inside each of the files I've changed the references to EMA just to RSI, and that's pretty much all I've done so far. I've really just made cosmetic changes to change the names to RSI instead of Fractal. The code in here is still for the EMA. I'll just compile this because it should still compile without problems, and that does. But now what I want to do is use the RSI instead of the 2 exponential moving averages. And to do that, I need to make a change to the framework, and I'm going to make that change by actually creating a new version of the framework, and then I'll add the RSI indicator to that. Now to update the framework, I was up to framework 3.04. Now this is framework 3.05. I've started by simply copying the framework 3.04 folder into this framework 3.05. This master framework.mqh file, I'll just open that. And here I've indicated I want to include framework 3.05 as the most recent. So if you've seen the earlier videos on the framework, this file simply maintains a list of all of the framework versions. And if you call this, it will just find the most recent version. Inside framework 3.05, then I have another framework.mqh file. And in this file, which was originally copied from 3.04, I've just changed the comment here, 3.05. I've added the RSI and MACD indicators. I've changed this framework version to 3_05, and this statement here, the if_def to 3_05. Those are the only changes needed in here. In the indicators now, there is a master indicators.mqh, which just includes the indicator base and then each of the other indicator files. So far, I've only included the indicator RSI. I haven't included the MACD here. And then the indicator RSI file, I've simply copied the indicator MA as a beginning point. But then to see what I've got here, include indicator base. The class name is now C indicator RSI. The RSI only uses a period and applied price. So I then have the init method that takes the period and the applied price. The constructor takes period and applied price because that will call the init method. And the second constructor, which allows you to set the symbol and the time frame, also now takes just period and applied price. The getData function doesn't change, so this is still declared as a virtual double, and it's only used for MQL4 because MQL4 retrieves data differently to MQL5, and that just has a buffer number and the index. Now the buffer number, there is only one buffer for RSI. The constructors, period and applied price, that will call the parent constructor using the chart symbol and the chart time frame, and then call the init method for the period and applied price. The second constructor, which gets past a symbol and time frame, will still call the parent constructor C indicator base, but this time passing the symbol and time frame that were passed in here, and then also calls the init for the period and applied price. The init method checks minit result in case the base class has had a failure, and then just captures that period and applied price into the member variables. For MetaTrader 5, we set up an indicator handle for the RSI using the symbol, time frame, period, and applied price. And if that handle is invalid handle, then we've failed at that point, and I simply raise an initialization error. And if not, then I raise an initialization error of nothing with init succeeded, basically to say that this was successful. The destructor, there's nothing here. And then if this is MQL4, I have this getData function that's declared, and that takes a buffer number and an index. And in the case of MetaTrader 4, I call the iRSI function here, passing the symbol, time frame, period, applied price, and the index, which gives me the RSI back for that bar number referred to in the index, and then just return the value. MetaTrader 5 returns values differently, so once this handle has been set up to the indicator, there is also a getData in the parent class which will retrieve data from that handle. But for MQL4, because I have to call a different function based on the getData here, I need to have this getData declared inside this class. So that's the RSI class created. I'll just quickly run a compile on that. So all my changes have worked, or at least as far as compiling. So that gives me an RSI class that I can use, and it's loaded by default through this indicator. So if I just load the framework, then I have the indicator RSI class available to me. Now to go back to the Fractal RSI, this is for both MetaTrader 4 and MetaTrader 5. So I have this MQ4 and the MQ5 file, and both of those include Fractal RSI.mqh. So this Fractal RSI.mqh is where most of the work happens. I declare a number of pieces of information, the copyright, link, version, a description, which I've already modified to say that this is following the RSI trend, and the comment, which is now Fractal RSI and a magic number. It includes this file framework.mqh. That file is inside Fractal RSI, so this is all the same as previously. And now there were two changes suggested from the comment, and those changes are independent. I can make one or the other. So first I'm just going to change this to use the RSI as the trend filter rather than the moving average. So these input statements, fast MA period and slow MA period, are not needed. I'll just replace those. So now it's an RSI specification. The RSI has a period, which is, I'm just setting a default of 10. You can change that to whatever you like. And an applied price, the RSI applied price, which I'm defaulting to closing price. The suggestion also said that I would be buying if the RSI is above 50 and selling if it's below 50. So I've created these two levels as inputs to let you vary that if you wish. So I'm setting the RSI buy level to 50 and the sell level to 50. And you'll see in the code, I don't buy or sell at 50. The RSI must be above or below 50. And the take profit stop loss ratio doesn't change. I go down to the expert initialization. This is where the next change happens. In the earlier expert, I was creating C indicator MA classes or C indicator MA objects. So now I'm passing in an indicator RSI object with the new C indicator RSI and then the RSI period and applied price passed to that. That gives me the RSI. The fractal is the same, just a new C indicator fractal, and there are no arguments to the fractal. The RSI buy level and sell level, they're not part of the indicator, so I'm passing those as separate variables into the expert, and the take profit stop loss ratio, and then the standards of the volume, trade comment, and magic number. Expert on init, which is to emulate this on init within the expert class, and dinit and expert.onTick. The framework, when I wrote this originally for the Fractal EMA, we were using framework 3.03. We're now at 3.05, so I just change this to use 3.05, and because this framework file is included in other files, now all of the files inside this Fractal RSI will use framework version 3.05. In the expert class, I can replace the C indicator MA with C indicator RSI, and then I have the two additional values of the RSI buy and sell level. I need variables for those. So the MRSI buy level and MRSI sell level. This constructor has changed because I'm not using the MA anymore. So now it just takes the C indicator RSI and C indicator fractal and then buy level, sell level, take profit, stop loss, volume, trade comment, and magic. Now the implementation of the constructor changes to match the declaration. Here I was assigning the moving average objects. I'll replace that and assign the RSI object. And I'll also store these buy and sell levels. In the destructor, I don't need the moving averages, but I do need to delete the RSI. With the moving average, I had this fast and slow variable, but I only have the RSI now. So just calling the mrsi.getData buffer number 0, because there is only the one buffer, and bar number 1. So I want the RSI from the bar that's just closed. The fractal statements don't change. Here, instead of comparing the fast moving average with the slow, I just want to know if the RSI is above or below the RSI buy and the RSI sell levels. So here, if the RSI is above the buy level, and then here, if the RSI is below the sell level. And those changes are sufficient to simply replace the moving average as the trend filter with the RSI as the trend filter. Let me go back here to the MQ5 file, compile, so I make sure there are no errors, and that all compiles, and that will run now using RSI instead of the two moving averages to set the trend. Still using the fractals to set the buy stop and the sell stop on those. So now let's make the second change, which instead of placing buy stops and sell stops in this make order, you can see I'm passing in order type buy stop or sell stop. The second change is to wait until the bar closes, and if it closes above the buy level or below the sell level, then I'll buy or sell. And all of the changes for that happen inside the expert. There's no further change to be made to the Fractal RSI. So back to the top of the code. What I'm saying is that if a bar closes above the recent fractal high and I'm in a trend buy, then I will place a buy trade. So I could take the approach of looking back at the earlier fractals at the close of each bar to find the most recent fractal high or fractal low, but instead I'm just going to remember each time I get a fractal, I'm going to remember what that fractal high or low was. And so I'm just going to need some variables to store that. So when I get a high fractal, I'm going to store the high of that bar as the buy price, and I'm going to store the low of the bar as the buy stop loss. The previous strategy said that my stop loss would be at the bottom of that fractal bar. Now, because I'm opening on the close of another bar instead of crossing that buy price, I'm actually going to be setting the stop loss differently, but this capturing of the low price on that high fractal will mean that I can get a difference between price and stop loss. You'll see me use that. And the sell price will store the low of a fractal low, and the sell stop loss will have the high of that bar. Now, the make order function placed order type buy stop or sell stop. Instead of that, I'm going to be placing trades directly. So I'm just going to replace that with a function. I'm going to call it open trade. This only takes the type and stop loss, which in this case is a distance. So when I call this, I'll be passing the difference between the buy price and the buy stop loss, or the difference between the sell price and the sell stop loss. So I don't need an actual price for placing the trade because these will always place trades at the current market price. So just get rid of this make order. Here in the constructor, I want to initialize that buy price and the sell price. So I'm just setting them to 0, and if these are 0, then I won't place any trades. So I'm waiting until the first time I reach a fractal of either the high or the low, and then that will set this buy and sell price. Down to the loop, because I'm looking to see if a bar has closed above or below the buy or sell from the fractals, I just want to capture the close price of the recent bar. So double close price equals I close symbol time frame bar number 1. The class, that is the closing price for the last bar. And now the order of logic in here will change quite a bit. I'll just leave the original code in here. I'll just put a couple of spaces in there and show the new code as I create it. So first I'm saying if the fractal high is not equal to empty value. So the fractal indicator will return an empty value if there is no fractal, and it will return an actual value if we get a fractal high or a fractal low. So if the fractal high is not empty value, then it means I've had a new fractal high, and I'm only looking at these at bar number 3. I mentioned this in the last video, so you should go back and see that, why I'm looking at bar number 3 for the fractals. If I have a new fractal high, then I simply say the buy price is the fractal high and the buy stop loss is the low of bar number 3, which is where I had the fractal. Fractal low is the same. If I have a fractal low, then the sell price is the fractal low and the sell stop loss is the high of that bar. And then the logic for opening trades is different. In this earlier logic, I would place the buy stop or the sell stop simply if the trend at the time that fractal appeared indicated a buy or a sell. Now I'm going to be only trading if the trend at the point where this most recent bar closes above or below that fractal shows that I should be buying or selling in that direction. Let's start with the buy. So if the M buy price is greater than 0, that means I have found a recent fractal that I have not traded. So if that's greater than 0, if the close price is greater than that buy price, so now I've got a bar that is closed above that recent fractal, and the RSI is greater than the RSI buy level, so I'm in a trend upwards. And then I call the open trade for an order type buy, passing the difference between the buy price and the buy stop loss, which is this buy price and buy stop loss. Now I could just as easily here have calculated that distance when I captured these. Instead I've captured both the buy price and the buy stop loss just for a bit of added flexibility, which I'm actually not using. So in good practice I would be removing these and simply capturing that difference. But I do need the buy price anyway because I'm checking to see if the close is above that. So it was just as easy to keep storing the buy stop loss. Once I've called that open trade, I set the buy price to 0, and that prevents me from simply creating more and more trades every time it closes above that buy price. The sell, very similar. If the sell price is above 0 and we've closed below that sell price from the recent fractal and the RSI is less than the RSI sell level, so we're in a downtrend, then I call open trade for a type sell, sell price minus sell stop loss. Now you might think that this should be sell stop loss minus sell price, but because this will return a negative number rather than a positive number, that actually works inside the open trade function. We'll see that soon. And then set sell price to 0. And that replaces this earlier code. Try and just take that out now. And now to the open trade code. I'll leave the make order there for a moment and I'll place the open trade below that. So open trade only takes the type and the stop loss. First thing I need to get is the current market price where I'm going to be placing the order or placing the trade. And that's double price. If the type is a buy, then I use symbol info double to get the ask price. And if it's not a buy, it must be a sell, so I use symbol info double to get the bid price. That gives me the opening price for a trade. And then I'm calling normalized double on that, price, comma, digits, bracket, bracket. The stop loss price then is also normalized double, price minus SL for number of digits. Now, if this is a buy trade, then price minus stop loss is going to give me a price below the price. If it's a sell trade, then SL has been passed in as a negative number, which we just mentioned, So price minus a negative number will actually give me a value above the current price, which is where it should be. So that's why I'm passing a negative number in this stop loss for a sell trade. The take profit price then is just the opposite of the stop loss, but I'm multiplying by this SL ratio. So instead of price plus stop loss, it's just price plus SL by the take profit stop loss ratio. And that is the same value for both the buy and the sell, because in the case of a sell, this is a negative number. In the case of a buy, it's a positive number. So price plus the stop loss for a buy, or price plus a negative number for the sell. And then using the trade object, which again I mentioned in the framework videos, and there will be links for that. Trade.positionOpen, symbol, type, order size, price, stop loss price, take profit price, and the trade comment. And that replaces this make order function. And that will now implement the change such that I trade on a bar closing above or below those defined levels. Let me go back and compile that again. All right, now a quick demonstration of this running, and then I'll actually just let it run to the end and you can see the results. Now, just using the default inputs, except that I have changed the volume to 0.01. I'm trading Euro USD last year, Fractal RSI EX5. Now here I have a low fractal at this point. I have a bar that is closed below that low fractal. The RSI is below 50, so I'm in a selling mode, and this has placed a sell trade at the close, or rather the opening of the next bar, which is the close of the previous bar. You can see a take profit here, and it's a little difficult to see, but there is a stop loss here. And those, if you remember, are based on the size of this bar that defined the fractal. Now that may not be the best strategy to use, that's just what I am using at the moment. Now I've let this run to show the same thing happening in the opposite direction. So here I had a high fractal. I've got a bar now that has closed just above that. So it's placed a buy trade, a stop loss down here, which is the distance of the size of this bar that created the fractal, and the take profit, again a little bit hard to see, but here. So what I'll do now, I'll turn off the visual. I will just run the strategy tester through to the end, and you can see the graph on how this has performed. So this is the Euro USD for the year 2021, and this is a 1 hour chart just using the default values. It has made something of a profit, but nothing too exciting. Let me do the same thing for a daily chart. So on the daily, far less trades, but still nothing exciting in terms of a profit. Now this is only trading 0.01s, and it is using the default settings. So if you want to try using some different setting, you might get a far better result. Now that was using RSI as a trend indicator. I'm going to do the same thing with MACD, and I'm doing this so that I can show that you don't need to just use indicators that are inside the framework. So for RSI, I created under the indicators folder, indicator RSI. As a framework, you typically would not be modifying this framework, because as new versions come out, they will overwrite the changes you've made. So if I wanted to create a MACD, and when you download this, there will be a MACD indicator in here. But if you wanted to create an indicator class based on some custom indicator, then you might want to create it outside of the framework. I'm going to actually do the same beginnings. I'm going to copy this Fractal RSI to Fractal MACD, make a few name changes, and then come back and show you how I'll do the coding. Now, I've taken a copy of this complete Fractal RSI folder and simply renamed that copy Fractal MACD. I've changed the names of these 3 key files to Fractal MACD, and I've been through all of the files and changed the various comments and names to MACD rather than RSI. So there's no coding change so far happening in here. I've also taken this indicator RSI file and copied that into the Fractal MACD folder and renamed it indicator MACD. So this is where I'm, in this instance, going to create an indicator that is for MACD that is outside the framework. Now let's work on that file first. Now this is just a copy of the RSI so far, so I need to change this to MACD. All instances of C indicator RSI I'm going to change to C indicator MACD. And here where I had the include indicator base, that won't work because indicator base is in a relative different location. But because this is now part of the Fractal MACD folder, I'm going to just include this framework file. And that framework file, which I have open here, does nothing more than include the current version framework. But that does give access to C indicator base from this C indicator MACD now. The member variables, period and applied price, were for the RSI. MACD has different variables: a fast period, a slow period, a signal period, and the applied price. So I just update those. The init needs to capture those values. So these are the same things: int fast period, slow period, signal, and applied price. The two constructors. And I'll mention here, the only reason I have this init function is because I allow for two constructors, and I want to be able to write the initialization code once. So each of these constructors calls that init. If I simply eliminated one of these constructors, and I would probably eliminate this constructor that doesn't accept symbol and time frame, because it's much better to have the more flexible constructor. If I eliminated that, then I could put all of the code that I have inside init just inside that constructor. But because I have two constructors, I don't want to duplicate this code. I need a function that I can call to handle that. So those constructors change, obviously, just for the different arguments: fast, slow, signal, and fast, slow, and signal. This ifdef MQL4 virtual double get data, that doesn't change because I'm still going to be asking for a buffer number and an index to get the values for MQL4. The change here is largely just because of the different values being passed in and a different call to the init. So new values. C indicator base gets the same values again though, symbol and time frame. And then the same changes to this second constructor. For the init method, obviously I have different arguments coming in: fast, slow, signal, and applied price. And then I want to capture those in the appropriate member variables: fast, slow, signal, and applied price. In this ifdef __ MQL5, all of this code for handling the error in the handle is the same. So I really just need to replace this one line, which due to the length of the line is wrapped around, but M indicator handle is now an IMACD call: symbol, time frame, fast, slow, signal, and applied price. And then the last change for MQL4, because I have to call the IMACD differently, I just need to replace this line: value equals IMACD, symbol, time frame, fast, slow, signal period, applied price, and the buffer number, because there are more than one buffer for MACD, and the index. The MACD actually has two values that it can return: the main line or the signal line. So the indicator MACD stands on its own, and that works. Now if I go back to the Fractal MACD code, here's the fractal MACD.mqh. I need to change that RSI to MACD. I want to include the indicator MACD that I've created. Different inputs for the MACD. So I not only have different inputs for the MACD, replacing these RSI inputs, but I also no longer need the buy and sell level because the MACD will handle that for me. Because what I'm going to be doing is comparing the signal line with the main line. Here in my new C expert, I no longer want the RSI, so I replace this with new C indicator MACD. I should just format that a little better for you. So new C indicator MACD, all the arguments for that, and then the fractal. I no longer need the buy level and the sell level. And the rest of this file is unchanged. That's the fractal MACD.mqh file. The expert, again, I'll just include the indicator MACD here. Because it's not actually part of the framework, I need to include that separately inside the rest of my code. Replace C indicator RSI with C indicator MACD. In the constructor, I do the same, replace the RSI with the MACD. Replace the assignment there, MACD now equals MACD. I don't need these buy and sell levels from the RSI. The delete statement here becomes MACD. And now in the loop, instead of capturing the RSI value, I'm capturing the main value and the signal value from the MACD with get data, and these buffer numbers, main line and signal line. Those are defined already inside MQL for you, and main line will give the main line value and signal line will obviously give the signal line value. Now I'm going to be trading when the signal line crosses the main line or main line crosses the signal line. And so all I need to do now is go down to these conditions for opening the trades. The buy price having a close above the buy fractal, that all doesn't change. I just need to change this RSI. And what I'm saying is if the main is above the signal, then I'm in an upward trend. And if the main is below the signal, I'm in a downward trend. Now, you may want to change that logic. This is just very simple logic, but this is to show you how you can change this to use a MACD with the main and signal comparison rather than the RSI value. And nothing else changes here. I should be able to compile that Fractal MACD now. Wrong parameters to see expert. I forgot to remove this buy level and sell level. But that's all compiled. Let's just go over and run that and see how it works. So I won't show it actually running, but I've run through without visual mode, and you can see the graph here for the 1 hour Euro USD for the year 2021. And let me run this again for a daily. And for the daily, obviously less trades, but similar sort of results to the RSI. So again, this is just using the default inputs. You may want to change those to get something that works a little better for you. But that is how I would convert this to use a different trend indicator. So as I've said, I'm not trying to promote any strategies here. This was mainly to show you how you can modify the code that I showed in the Fractal EMA to work with a different trend indicator. And I've done that with both the RSI and the MACD. And I've also shown how you can change from using the buy stop and sell stop to waiting for a close of candle past those buy and sell limits. Hope this code's been useful to you. If it has, then please click the like button. And if you want to see more of our videos, click subscribe and then click the bell indicator and you'll be notified the next time we release a video. Thank you for watching.